What did you learn coming off of the actual election leading into the runoff that you were able to bring with you?
Well, I learned to stay on message, and I think I also learned that people really do want a candidate who can stay on the high road, that can talk about ideas and solutions, and not engage in the dirty politics that people have become so accustomed to. So we're bringing that forward.
So we're just a few days out from the runoff election. Now compared to a few days before the previous election, how are you feeling?
Pretty much the same. I was asked if I got nervous watching the numbers come in on election night, and I said that I didn't watch them come in, and the response was, "You're kidding." And I said, "No, look, I believe I was called to do this, and because of that, I know it's going to come out the way it's supposed to, so I'm fine with it."
How have you been holding up campaigning? You said you've been getting very little sleep, so how have you been holding up?
Well, I've lost 12 pounds, and I've told people if you want to cut back on how much you're eating and how much you're sleeping, then run for Congress. But my energy level's good. I feel good. There are parts of this that I've enjoyed. There's parts that I haven't. But overall, you adjust and you get accustomed to the pace. And now I'm concerned about how it's going to be after the campaign is over. How do you scale back?
I know that when we talked with you before the election, as we're heading into the runoff, you kind of stated why you felt like you were the man for the job. Mm-hmm. Why don't you just take some time and reiterate that for me?
Well, I've got almost 25 years experience working in public policy, solving some of these issues that we're dealing with. I've done a lot of work at the state level. I've done a lot of work at the federal level. And I'm not unknown up there. I'll walk in on day one and have a core group of members of Congress that are going to work with me and that I'm going to work with. In addition to that, though, over the last 22 years, I've helped set up a national network of state-based think tanks similar to the Alabama Policy Institute. These are organizations that work at the state level. They're very involved in their local media. They're very good in their social media. Some of them even have their own shows, and they're driving the reforms that are taking place in the country right now. There's 65 of these organizations. There's at least one in every state. So what I bring to the table is a national network. I've told people that we're not going to change the country from the top down. Now you have to get in Congress, introduce the reforms that are needed, but the messaging needs to be driven from the bottom up. There are far more people watching and listening to their local media than the national media. They're tuned in for their news, sports, and weather. They're listening to the local talk radio. They read their local papers. That's where we need to be with messaging for the reforms that we need to get introduced in Congress and get passed. And that's what I bring to the table that's unique from any candidate, maybe even in the country, and that I will go to Washington, be a known entity up there, but also have this national network that really nobody else has.
A lot of people, when they cast their vote, they want to know that they have a candidate that listens to them. From your campaign trail, what are these people telling you they want to see in the person they send to Washington?
Well, they want to see integrity, and they want to see someone who has a clue about what to do. And the people that I'm running into are very concerned about being able to keep their health insurance, for one thing. Obamacare is a huge issue, but also keep their job. And what I've been able to do on the campaign trail is communicate solutions to people in an honest and straightforward manner. Every other candidate that's been in the race was for repealing Obamacare. But the truth is, it's going to take 3 or 4 years to get that done. Obama's got 2 more years in office, but there are things that we can do to rein him in and to run out the clock on his agenda. The other thing is the economy. Now, that is something that I do think that we can turn around rather quickly. I believe the Republicans are going to win the Senate, and with the House and Senate in Republican hands, I think we can open up some of our energy resources, and it's going to drive an economic recovery. And it'll also have a geopolitical impact in terms of we can begin that process of making OPEC irrelevant. We can start relieving Europe from some of the pressure that they feel from having to buy oil and natural gas from Russia and from the Middle East. So there's a lot that can be done, and then the longer term issues are the debt. And I think we can solve that. We can pay that down, but it's going to take 20, 25 years. But the key is to stop talking about how bad everything is all the time, which I think just takes the life right out of people, and start talking about a vision for how we can get our country back on the right track. And I think people are more likely to rally to a vision of how we're going to do that than we are just constantly complaining about Obama or Pelosi or Reid or anybody else.
We have seen a series of political ads that have been put forth by your opponent that I read in one article that you were quoted as saying were misleading. Can you kind of explain your thoughts on that?
Well, there was an article that I wrote in 2003 during the Amendment 1 issue. That was the Amendment 1 was would have raised over $1 billion in taxes. It was a huge tax increase. And I wrote an article that they took completely out of context. I was one of the leading opponents of Amendment 1, and practically everybody knows it. And what they've done is they think that the average voter is their memory's too short or they're too dumb to know the difference. And frankly, as a voter, I would find that offensive, that they would run ads like this to try to portray me as someone who's for raising taxes. And even the local media have picked up on this, that it's really a very deceptive, disingenuous ad that misrepresents my position on taxes.
I know that you are very familiar with your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Are you shocked by the ads that you've seen on yourself?
I'm very disappointed in Paul. I've known him for a long time. He's a nice guy. My guess is he's gotten some bad advice, but I think it's also indicative that he's at a point of desperation. Paul has a very intense desire to be in Congress. This was his career goal, apparently, and it's made him do some things that frankly I'm disappointed that he did.
In looking at the overall campaign, not just the past few days, past few weeks, but in general, have you been pleased by what you've seen and what you've heard from people that are pledging their support with you?
I have. People have responded to a positive message, and here's one of the things that I think is very important in this campaign is before I ever decided to run for office, the constant refrain that I heard is that good people can't win, good people can't run. And part of it is, I think, is people don't want to subject themselves to the kind of abuse that you're subjected to as a candidate. But I also think a lot of times that good people won't run because they don't want to be part of a negative campaign themselves. And there's this perception out there that you can't win unless you go negative. And one of the things that I want people to see in my campaign is that you can win. You can run a clean campaign. You can run on ideas and represent positions in an honest, straightforward manner and win an election.
Is there anything else you want to add that you want to make sure that you are able to tell the people?
Just get out and vote. They're saying it's going to be a very low turnout, and it's going to be imperative that people get out and vote. Their vote will really matter in a runoff. Does
that scare you any whenever you hear those stats about the fact of, because I've seen several that kind of depict of how many people they expect to go out? Does that worry you, or how does that make you feel?
It disappoints me. I heard General Charles Krulak, former Commandant of the Marine Corps and currently the President of Birmingham Southern College, speak at my church at Briarwood Presbyterian on our Patriotic Sunday, and he made the point that over 7.5 million Americans over the course of our history have either paid the ultimate price or been wounded in battle. That's a lot of blood that's been spilt for our freedom, and it's really disappointing when so few people are turning out to vote. Now, again, I go back to a point that I've made on the campaign trail, is that Republicans and conservatives have become experts at depressing people because all they want to do is talk about how bad everything is. And I think that drives down turnout. I think that's one of the reasons why the Republican Party is hemorrhaging conservative voters, is they've convinced people that things are so bad that it's irretrievable. I don't think that's the right approach. I think we need to get out and we need to give people a vision for how we'll get our country back, but I also think we need to challenge them to live up to the sacrifices that have been made for them. And if we want to get our Constitution back, if we want to maintain our freedom, we want to be able to live our lives the way we want to live them, then we need to participate in the process. That's why I'm running.